Hello, my name is Connor Christensen, and my research project examined the effects of co-teaching during math instruction on the perceptions and achievement of kindergarten students. The question that I focused my project around was, does co-teaching during math instruction have an effect on perceptions and achievement of kindergarten students? This was a non-equivalent control group study with two kindergarten classes. One kindergarten class received the treatment of co-teaching, while the other class received the treatment of solo teaching. I entailed a pre and post test to gather quantitative data, while I did a perceptual interview with only one of the classes to get qualitative data. This study began because of a change that happened in my building at the beginning of the year. We had one special education teacher retire, and we got a new to us special education teacher. Because of a parish shortage, the special education teacher was covering my special education student during our math block. After a couple weeks of her simply assisting and observing, she offered to co-teach, or suggested that we co-teach, as it would benefit our students more. I wasn't familiar with co-teaching. I had never done it before, but I'm always willing to go to do what's best for our students. And so we began. Shortly after we began co-teaching, I realized that my students were much more engaged. They were getting so much more practice than when they were solo taught, and it seemed as if they were learning faster and their achievement was growing. And so I thought it was amazing, and I wondered why everyone else wasn't doing it, why it wasn't a more common practice. So that's when the study began, and I formulated the question that the study is based on. To begin, we looked at some research to kind of get an idea of the research that was out there. So I first looked at the different types of co-teaching. And all the research that I found, they described the same models. The models were one teach, one assist, station teaching, parallel teaching, alternative teaching, and team teaching. For my study, we used station teaching as our co-teaching model. And so I looked a little bit further into that. Station teaching is simply a way of regrouping students. You can do it randomly, you can do it by level. So for our study, we grouped the students by level. Each station focuses on different skills and activities. Two stations obviously are teacher-led, while one or two others are independent. The smaller groups and the stations encourage students to take risks and ask questions. And as we'll see later on in the presentation, also increase their confidence. I then looked at co-teaching and achievement. In the studies that I found, co-teaching generally had a positive impact on achievement. And as we know, co-teaching is a way of keeping students with disabilities in the least restrictive environment. So it's associated with a positive impact on those students. But co-teaching has been found to benefit all students, general education and special education. One study suggested that the positive impact on achievement isn't always guaranteed, and it actually depends on the topic. In their study, they were in a secondary math classroom and conducted the study during 3 co-taught units. And 2 of the units, the achievement was either negative or average, while the 3rd unit, the achievement was positive. So in that scenario, it was less positive than it was anything else. And then lastly, with relation to achievement, a couple articles discussed how co-taught classrooms often outscore solo-taught classrooms, or the students outscore the other students. Lastly, co-teaching, according to one article, is capable of closing achievement gaps. But I also found in another article that the impact on closing the achievement gap was minimally positive. So we see both sides of the argument here. I then looked at co-teaching and engagement and perceptions of the students. In all the articles I found, it was very unanimous that co-teaching has a positive impact on student engagement. One of the articles discussed how the increase in engagement actually affects achievement, and this happens regardless of the model that was used. According to, or regarding the perceptions, many of the students, or all the students, prefer the small groups because of the benefits that we talked about prior, but also they believe that it improves their learning experience, and as I just mentioned, it also improves their self-confidence. To collect the data, I had to first determine a class that most resembled mine. Because of the short time frame, I wasn't able to do this study with my class and both treatments. So I looked at the two other kindergarten classes in my building, found the one that most resembled mine. One class had 25 students while the other had 24. I looked at gender, test scores, and things like that. The research project consisted of 2 weeks or 10 school days, one lesson per day at 60 minutes per block. Both classes used the same math curriculum. They used the same lessons, the same lesson plans. The pre and post tests were pulled from the curriculum. They were simple 4-question assessments, obviously for kindergarten students, that assessed the learning and the growth. The pre-test was the same format but different questions in the post-test. Prior to giving each assessment, the other teacher and I sat down to discuss protocol to make sure we had fidelity in giving the assessments. Lastly, the perceptual interview was only done with one class, the class that received the co-teaching treatment, because that was the only class that had received co-teaching and solo teaching. This was done by simply asking a few questions and recording those questions in a spreadsheet. First, looking at the quantitative data, I graphed the pre-test and post-test scores according to the number of students that reached each or achieved each score. We see on the pre-test graph that the scores are pretty spread out, with the solo taught class leaning more to the higher side, while the co-taught class was pretty evenly spread from 1 to 4. Moving to the post-test graph, we see all students have achieved more than 0 or 1 on the assessment out of 4, while the majority of students in both classes received 4 out of 4. Looking at the growth between these two graphs was difficult, so I then moved on to another graph which looked at the mean scores of the two classes. Looking at the pre-test, we see that the co-taught class was slightly lower in their mean scores than the solo taught class. And then moving on to the post-test, we see that the co-taught is still slightly behind the solo taught. Looking at those two graphs, it looks like there is not much difference in growth, so I calculated the growth. The difference in growth from pre-test to post-test for co-taught classes was 1 point, while the difference in growth from pre to post for solo taught was almost 0.8. Obviously, this shows that co-teaching had a more positive impact on growth on student achievement. But to calculate the statistical significance, I did a two-tailed t-test. The p-score that I got was 0.384, which is obviously much greater than 0.05, which states that the growth, while positive, is not statistically significant. For the qualitative data, I asked a few simple questions. First, I asked if students preferred co-teaching or solo teaching. And as we see, 25 students out of 25 preferred co-teaching. Then next, to follow up that, I said, why do you like our new math? Or why do you like math with co-teaching more? Almost, or over 50% of the students stated that it either had to do with the co-teacher or getting to rotate in their groups. So this shows that the co-teaching model had a much or very positive impact on the student perceptions. They all preferred the co-teaching, and it had to do with either seeing the co-teacher or being able to rotate to different stations. So therefore, co-teaching does have an effect on student perceptions and achievement. The effect was positive, though it was not statistically significant. And perceptions, 100% of students preferred co-teaching over solo teaching. The findings in my research do align with the research that I found. and the fact that the effect of co-teaching is positive. I plan on sharing this with my team, my principal, my MTSS committee, and hopefully some district leaders. The goal being to promote best practice and get co-teaching happening more in our buildings. In the future, I'd really like to retry this study. I'm hoping for the ability to do this for a full school year, the beginning semester, a full school year with the same class, with the first semester being all solo taught and gathering data on all the units that we complete, and then employing co-teaching in the second semester, gathering the data, and then comparing it. I believe that with more time and more data, I'll get more definitive results and really see if the difference is positive, if the effect is positive, and then at that time we might be able to see if it is statistically significant or if it is still not. That is all I've got for today. I hope you enjoyed my research and my presentation. Have a great day.